Hello and welcome to Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. I'm Ian Masters, and today we'll look into a number of stories and issues in the news. We'll begin with Trump's long press conference today, ostensibly to congratulate himself for the daring and successful mission to rescue two downed pilots over Iran, involving over 100 aircraft, with the loss of an F-15E, two C-130 MC-130 transports, two AH-6 Little Bird helicopters, two Black Hawk helicopters shot up, and an MQ-9 Reaper drone and a Hermes 900 drone lost in combat. Joining us to discuss how Iran's anti-aircraft capacity is not obliterated, as Trump has claimed, is Adam Weinstein, the Deputy Director of the Middle East Program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. A former Marine deployed to Afghanistan, he previously worked as a senior law and policy analyst at the National Iranian American Council. We will discuss his article at Responsible Statecraft, Planes and Pilots Down, Is the U.S. Prepared for Real Conventional War? Then we'll examine Trump's deadline of 8 p.m. Eastern Tuesday, when he will begin his power plant and bridge destruction day to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age, leaving its people to live in hell, following his vulgar and bloodthirsty threats against the Iranian nation he is supposedly freeing from its brutal and repressive government. Joining us is Dr. Mohsen Sazegara, an Iranian journalist and pro-democracy political activist who was a founder of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and held several high-ranking positions during the early years of the Iranian Revolution. He served as Deputy Prime Minister in Political Affairs, Deputy Minister for Heavy Industry, Deputy Chairman of the Budget and Planning Departments, before becoming disillusioned with the government in 1989 after pushing for reforms. He applied to become a candidate for president in Iran in the 2001 election and was refused. His reformist policies clashed with the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, eventually resulting in his arrest in early 2003, and following his release in August of 2003, he moved to the United Kingdom and currently resides in the United States, having become a U.S. citizen. He joins us to provide insight into the working of Iran's theocratic government and what is not being done to free the Iranian people from the Ayatollahs and the IRGC. And before we begin with Trump having bombed 7 countries and started a war against Iran, while at home his ICE thugs terrorize and break up families, murdering American citizens in the process, the need to rid the country of the deeply unpopular Trump kakistocracy and his clown car cabinet could not be more urgent. But these crooks and criminals would do anything to stay in power, as their billionaire buddies buy up the mainstream media and the mob boss intimidates Republican politicians. Only people power can beat money power, and we need all hands on deck as we continue to do our part, delivering a daily public service, providing the facts and evidence to inform the majority of what they are up against and how to win back our country, our decency, and the respect of the community of nations. You can help save America's 250-year-old democracy by making a tax-deductible donation at backgroundbriefing.org/donate or at publictruthmedia.org, and thank you. And joining us now is Adam Weinstein, who is the Deputy Director of the Middle East Program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, a former Marine deployed to Afghanistan. He previously worked as a senior law and policy analyst at the National Iranian American Council, and he has an article at Responsible Statecraft, Planes and Pilots Down, Is U.S. Prepared for Real Conventional War? Welcome to Background Briefing, Adam Weinstein.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. And the President, of course, had this long and rambling press conference today, along with Secretary so-called War, Defense, and the head of the CIA and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And Trump is basically has a deadline of 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Tuesday, when he will begin his power plant and bridge destruction day to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age, leaving its people to live in hell, following his vulgar and bloodthirsty threats against the Iranian nation that he's supposedly freeing the people from his brutal and repressive government. So, I don't know, this is so Alice in Wonderland. Is there any way that his long press conference today, he keeps suggesting that they're close to a deal Obviously, we all want a deal. We want this agony to end. But is this Trump's magical thinking, or do you think there's actually a possibility of a deal, even though he has been so vulgar and insulting towards the Iranian nation, its own people, not just the government?
I think there's a possibility of a deal, but it depends how willing he is to provide certain concessions on the Straits of Hormuz. And the Iranians want guarantees. They want some kind of restitution that they will get through the Straits, which in a sense the Americans won't have to pay because actually it will probably be East Asian countries that are paying for that passage. But it will just depend how open and pragmatic he's willing to be. I mean, I just don't know, and that's the trouble.
Well, but he's asking the American taxpayer to pay 1.5 trillion for the next defense budget with a 200 billion premium to pay for the Iran war. So on top of that, we're going to have to pay reparations to Iran. We don't have an endless supply, do we, of
It
money?
would probably be mostly foreign ships that would be paying the reparations through some sort of toll through the Strait of Hormuz. But yes, I mean your point otherwise stands, and of course we're also paying for this through gas prices. So the American people are already paying.
Right. So what did you make of this long press conference today? He once again keeps bringing up Obama and the JCPOA. It's obviously some kind of obsession of his to one up Obama, but he seemed defensive this time. So I guess he knows that some people are questioning the wisdom of tearing up the JCPOA.
Well, yeah, he should be defensive. I mean, the irony of all of this is that it would be it'd be actually quite positive if he could get the same terms of the JCPOA now. I mean, that was an agreement that really gave the world a lot of oversight into Iran's nuclear activities. And unfortunately, he ripped it up and then he killed Qasem Soleimani. And then, of course, he undermined his own negotiations this summer and again this year. And the real tragedy is here is that, President Trump is so unconventional that he's the kind of US president that could have probably had more normalized relations with Iran without much of a political cost to himself. And yet he chose to repeat the mistakes of his predecessors, but even with even less strategy. I mean, the way he has prosecuted this war in Iran has an even less clear end state than some of the other post 9/11 wars. But President Trump seems to have this inclination in which he needs to destroy all that came before him. So he can't build on the JCPOA. He needs to destroy it and come up with a so-called bigger and better agreement. The problem is that President Trump doesn't really have the strategic patience to do the hard work of diplomacy. He seems to think that diplomacy is making threats on Truth Social and having sending his envoys to have one-off meetings, but actually real diplomacy is a slow process, a highly technical process, and he doesn't seem to have the patience for it.
Well, in the press conference, he said today that, quote, the entire country, meaning Iran, can be taken out in one night, and that night might be tomorrow night. Now, already we've heard from Hegseth, the so-called Secretary of War, that he's made some really bellicose and belligerent and bloodthirsty threats. And he even went so far as to say that we would give the enemy no quarter, which means that you would actually shoot troops surrendering, right? And here we have a rescue operation to free two pilots, which was done with incredible skill, but at a great cost in military hardware. So if Hegseth is saying no quarter, doesn't that give the Iranians the right to kill those pilots if they capture them?
Well, I don't know if the Iranians would want to do that. I think they'd have value. I think they'd see more value in keeping the pilot alive as some part of a trade deal. But regardless, I mean, what President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have consistently promoted online and in live speeches are war crimes. I mean, they're openly advocating for war crimes, which of course is highly problematic in and of itself. And I think it actually comes from a position of weakness. I mean, they the war is not going as they wanted it to go, and so because they have no strategy, they're resorting to making these grandiose claims about sending Iran back to the Stone Age. And if you wanted to normalize the Iranian regime, I mean, this is how you would go about doing it. It's actually most Iranians, no matter how critical they are of the regime, are not willing to sign on to those kinds of statements.
So in terms of the military hardware lost and your recent article at Responsible Statecraft, Planes and Pilots Down, is the US prepared for a real conventional war? Do we really know what the full cost of hardware has been? We know that the F-15E was shot down, the two C-130 MC-130 transports were lost, two AH-6 Little Bird helicopters, two Black Hawk helicopters were shot up, and a MQ-9 Reaper drone and a Hermes 900 drone were lost in combat, just in this one operation, which I think indicates, as you have pointed out, that Trump's claim that Iran's anti-aircraft capacity has been decimated doesn't ring true.
Yeah, well, it clearly hasn't been decimated. I mean, in terms of the dollars and cents cost, in some sense, if you compare it to the overall budget, it's a write-off. But the bigger problem, I think, is that I mean, we are advertising to potential adversaries around the world that we're not even able to effectively prosecute a war against Iran. I mean, it almost resembles when Russia invaded Ukraine, and the Russians were able to do a lot of damage, but it actually eroded this myth around Russia. People used to talk about Russia as a near peer adversary of the United States, and the war in Ukraine changed that completely. So even though the Russians were able to do a lot of damage in Ukraine, they ended up, overall looking much weaker than people had previously thought. And I think the same thing is happening to the United States, unfortunately. If I'm Beijing right now, I'm watching very closely at the missteps that the United States is making in Iran, and I'm probably feeling a lot more confident about a future conflict over Taiwan.
But isn't this about the magical thinking of Putin in the case of Ukraine and the magical thinking of Trump in the case of this current war on Iran?
Yeah, they both share that characteristic. I mean, they both share that characteristic of magical thinking. They think that brute force is a strategy when it's not, and they underestimate the resilience of their adversaries. Putin greatly underestimated the willingness of the Ukrainians to resist, and Trump has done the same thing when it comes to Iran.
And of course, the difference with the Russian military and the US military is that the Russian military, the officers treat their enlisted men appallingly, and there's little to no morale, and they throw them into the meat grinder. And conversely, the Ukrainians seem to have really strong motivation. But the US military, I think, my sense of today's press conference is that Trump is trying to bask in the glory of the skill and professionalism of the US military, in a sense, disguise or distract us from his own incompetence.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it's also true. Look, the U.S. military on a tactical level is very proficient. I mean, the U.S. intelligence agencies are very good at collecting data and intelligence. That doesn't replace a strategy, though. I mean, you can have a very professional military that's capable of rescuing a pilot or two pilots in this case, or capable of assassinating the supreme leader, but that's not a replacement for a war strategy. I mean, in Afghanistan, we were highly proficient at the technical level too. We still ended up losing the war because there was no real strategy.
Well, I know it's a bit of a digression, but I try to stay in touch with what's happening in Russia. And the word on the street in Russia now is that the Iranian women have bigger cojones than the Russian men. In other words, women, life and freedom. They went out to the streets, the women in Iran, they got shot down. They faced this murderous government. And they complaint amongst those who want to get rid of Putin in Russia is that compared to Iranian women, Russian men are not about to take to the streets. So I don't know what you make of that, but I thought that was an interesting anecdote.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideas of democracy are more a part of Iranian culture than they are of Russian culture. And of course, there's all kinds of corruption in Russia, although there is in Iran as well. And I think there's plenty of Russian men that are just brainwashed by the machismo of Putin. Although, I mean, the people who have challenged him have been quite brave. But yes, I agree. I sign on completely to the bravery of Iranian women and their protests against the regime, especially after the murder of Masa Amini.
But aren't we hanging these people out to dry? Didn't Trump and Pahlavi, the baby Shah, back in January, didn't they say, we're going to come to your rescue, and warned the government not to shoot these people, and they went ahead and massacred at least 6,000. Trump actually claimed the other day that it was 40,000. But do you think that to some extent Trump and Pahlavi Jr., the baby Shah, have blood on their hands?
Yeah, of course. I think Pahlavi has carried himself in an almost narcissistic way in which he knows that he has influence over some segments of the Iranian population, and he doesn't seem to care what happens to them. If there was any, I mean, it's pretty clear that President Trump doesn't care about democracy in Iran. If he was really dedicated, I still think it would be foolhardy to sort of support a rebellion inside Iran because I think the history of the US trying to do those things is very fraught. But, you know, even if that were the case that he was going to do that, he would have conducted these strikes back in January. But as he didn't, he waited for the protests to die down. And I think it's very apparent that he could care less about the ordinary people in Iran or any kind of democracy in Iran. I think they want to make Iran irrelevant by destroying its industrial base, and that's what they're doing.
Well, that has been the understanding, or at least what analysts I've spoken to have said, that that's where the US and Israel diverge, that Israel wants to turn Iran into another Syria or Libya. But the US doesn't really want to do that. And certainly the Saudis and the Gulf countries probably don't want to live that close to a failed state. Is there any daylight between Israel and Trump in terms of the end game here?
Yeah, there's plenty of daylight. I mean, I think the Israelis want to see an actual regime change because they simply do not believe they can live with an Islamic Republic of Iran. And so they're willing to stomach a lot of pain in order to achieve some kind of regime change. I mean, they're not going to send boots on the ground, but they're willing to have, missiles hitting Tel Aviv and other parts of Israel, because for them, this is a vital interest. For Trump, I think Trump sort of naively thought that he would assassinate the supreme leader and that the government would somehow come kowtowing to him and say, "Okay, what do you want from us? We'll do anything." And now that that's not what has happened, he almost wants to go back to the status quo of the day before he launched this war. I mean, what is his main demand? Open the Straits of Hormuz. Well, the Straits of Hormuz were open before he launched this war. So there is a lot of daylight between the Israelis and the Americans. But right now, the way the United States is behaving, it does advance Israel's interests because they're still conducting strikes against Iran and weakening the government.
But as far as I know, Iran is setting up a toll booth on the Straits of Hormuz, and that the IRGC have already are running it out of Larak Island, and they've already announced a fee structure, and they're paying for oil. At least the Chinese get through free, and everybody else has made a deal. Japanese are moving to the renminbi, and others are moving to the yuan. And do you think that at the end of the day, if oil is de-dollarized, is that the beginning of the end of our greatest asset, which is the power of the US dollar as a global reserve currency? Because that seems to be happening in a short period of 5 to 6 weeks.
I think it threatens it. I still think for the near term, the dollar is going to be preferred by central banks as a reserve currency for various reasons, not the least of which is the U.S. sanctions regime around the world. But yeah, it is a big blow. I mean, there's nothing. I can't think of a single real silver lining to this war. I mean, maybe you could argue that they've diminished Iran's missile capacity, but that's temporary. Other than that, I can't really think of anything positive from a U.S. interest perspective. I can only see negatives.
But do you think that there was ever a chance, going back to the JCPOA that Trump tore up, was there ever a chance of not just negotiating the nuclear portfolio, but also negotiating the missiles and the proxy issues?
Perhaps over time, I mean, rather than a negotiation, what could have happened is the JCPOA could have remained in effect. Relations would have been more normalized. There would have been more investment from Europe and the rest of the world into Iran, and maybe even potentially from the United States. And so the cost of unleashing proxies in Iraq or Lebanon would have been high for Iran. And what I'm really trying to say is at some point the Iranians might have begun to self-regulate themselves because missiles and proxies aren't good for business. But the problem is we altered that calculation. I mean, I don't really blame the Iranian state for investing in missiles and its own defense when it's been faced with regime change threats for decades now.
So if Trump, as he's threatened, if tomorrow night is going to take out the whole country in one night, obviously that's hyperbole, but it's also bloodthirsty. And if I don't know whether or not there's any chance of a last minute deal, whether the Iranians will want to avoid the destruction of their infrastructure and cause, I mean, already a lot of it's being destroyed in any case. So if that's where we're heading, what does that leave the Gulf countries across the other side of the Gulf? I mean, the Saudis, Kuwait, UAE, which is, by the way, apparently UAE has had more strikes on them from Iran than even Israel itself. So I'm wondering what those people are thinking. You know, they've relied on the US for its protection. They bought billions and billions of US weaponry. We're told that MBS is on the phone to Trump all the time saying, finish the job, finish the job. I'm wondering where they stand, because if Trump sort of declares victories and walks away and leaves a mess behind, which I think, well, let me ask you, do you think that's the most likely scenario?
Yeah, probably if we're going to guess, but who knows? I mean, it's just hard to be in the guessing game these days. But I think there is a strong chance that the Trump administration would declare victory and walk away and then leave the Gulf with the precedent of Iranian missiles raining down on places like Riyadh and Dubai and Doha. And yeah, so and the Iranians are going to retaliate if Trump follows through on his power plant day threat. The Iranians will retaliate in the Gulf.
So that will mean Abqaiq and all of these big oil terminals will be bombed. And if so, that means that oil will be off the market for a long time, even if the
Potentially,
straits are open, right?
potentially, we'll have to see the scale of it.
So we could have, what, $10 a gallon gas?
That's outside of my area of expertise in terms of valuation, but I don't see gasoline going down anytime soon. You know, the Iranian regime has every incentive not to give in to Trump's demands. It needs to exert as high a cost as possible now so that, you know, it doesn't make sense for the regime. Remember, the regime cares about the regime's survival even more than it cares about the functionality of the Iranian state or the Iranian people. And so they're not going to risk giving into, you know, agreeing to some deal with Trump that allows Trump to come back and do this again in 2 months or 3 months or 1 year. They need to make the cost so high that you know the Americans and the Israelis really think twice about ever doing this again. So that's why you don't see them rushing to an agreement with the Trump administration.
Well, Adam Weinstein, I thank you very much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And again, I've been speaking with Adam Weinstein, who's the Deputy Director of the Middle East Program at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, a former Marine deployed to Afghanistan. He previously worked as a senior law and policy analyst at the National Iranian American Council, and he has an article at Responsible Statecraft, Planes and Pilots Down, Is the U.S. Prepared for Real Conventional War? We're going to take a brief station break and back examining Trump's deadline of 8 p.m. Eastern Tuesday, when he will begin his power plant and bridge destruction day to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age, leaving its people to live in hell following his vulgar and bloodthirsty threats against the Iranian nation he is supposedly freeing from its brutal and repressive government. Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now is Dr. Mohsen Sazegara, who is an Iranian journalist and pro-democracy political activist, who was a founder of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and he held several high-ranking positions during the early years of the Iranian Revolution. Welcome to Background Briefing, Mohsen Sazegara.
Thank you for having me, Ian.
So, You served as the Deputy Prime Minister in Political Affairs and the Deputy Minister for Heavy Industry and the Deputy Chairman of the Budget and Planning Department and many more portfolios before you became disillusioned with the revolutionary government in Iran in 1989 because you were pushing for reforms. And then you applied to become a candidate for president of Iran in the 2001 elections, which was refused. And then you clashed with the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, resulting in your arrest in early 2003. And then you eventually released in August of 2003, were able to move to the UK and then on to the United States, where you've become an American citizen. So you obviously are in a unique position, Mohsen, to tell us about the thinking in the IRGC, particularly given your clash with the Supreme Leader, who, of course, was killed on the first day by the Israelis. His son apparently was badly wounded. I think he's in the ICU. We don't quite know whether he's still alive. What do you know about the son? Because he was also a member of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, was he not?
I can say that he was in war front, a war between Iran and Iraq for a year. At the last year of that 8 years war, while he was at the high school level, the last year of high school. Officially, he was not a member of IRGC. He was just as a besieged, the militia of IRGC who were trained, and they went to war fronts as infantries of that war. And after that, after graduation from high school, he has gone to seminary school and became a cleric. And it's now more than 15 years that his father, Khamenei, paved the way for him to become the next leader. And in this way, Khamenei eliminated some of the top people of this regime, like Hashemi Rafsanjani, who was actually the crown donor to Khamenei and made him the leader. after death of the first leader. And Mojtaba is very well acquainted with the qualification and the complex relationships inside the leader headquarters. In Iran is famous as the house of the leader, but actually that headquarter is the real commander of whole the country. I mean, IRGC or intelligence, 16 different intelligence organizations, or judiciary powered exclusive national radio and television of Iran, and many other institutions, including about half of the 50% of the GDP of Iranian economy of Iran belong to the companies that are owned by the leader. So that headquarter is running all these institutions and the system that is running the country. And Mojtaba is the person, if he's alive and if he can be healthy after this war and come to the scene, he has been trained to run that headquarter. And I can say that what I know about him, I have not seen him, I have never seen him, but what I know from Green Movement 2009 so far, in different scenes, I have seen that he has been, besides to his father, in charge of suppression of the people. He's more brutal than his father. And literally, he's a murderer against the people. And he's corrupted too, like his father. So
Right.
this is what I know about Mojtaba.
Sure. As you point out, he ran the Beit, the office of the Supreme Leader, and that was blown up on the first day. And why they were there and the whole family was there is pretty hard to understand. But he also owned a bank, or owns a bank, and is deeply unpopular. And so let's go to the present now, where we just learned today that the Israelis killed the head of intelligence of the IRGC, and they've killed a whole bunch of their top leaders. But it looks as if they have a system of redundancy where they have this sort of mosaic of leadership where at different levels where they're able to continue on. And now we have a situation where Trump, after these obscene outbursts on Easter Sunday, saying words that I can't even repeat on the radio, he is now saying that we're close to making a deal, and the Iranians are saying, no, we're not agreeing to a ceasefire. The negotiations are going on with the Pakistanis as the mediators. But let's begin with just any possibility, because I always want to keep my mind open to the possibilities. It's as disastrous as this war is, and as disastrous as Trump is as president of the United States, he's clearly losing his mind. Nevertheless, is there a possibility that you could have some kind of a ceasefire and some kind of end to this war? What's your reading on what's going on in these talks in Pakistan?
Yeah, but what I have heard is that Iran pre-condition is ceasefire before any negotiation. Iran says that you can't invite us to negotiation while Israel is destroying our infrastructure, industries of Iran, steel factories, petrochemical factories, and many infrastructures of Iran. So the precondition is that first the war should be stopped. Then we can negotiate on all subjects that Trump has mentioned it in 14 point article proposal of the United States that mostly all of those 14 points are concentrated on nuclear issue, proxy groups, and missiles of Iran. And Iran counter proposal has 6 items that some of them are not achievable, likewise the U.S. ones. But I think that if they go for a negotiation, they can have an agreement, but through diplomacy. I don't know. President Trump, I think that not only him, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, they had lower estimation of this regime. They didn't know the structure of this regime. For this reason, they thought that if they kill the leader or 100 people, 200 people, then top people, then this regime will collapse. That's not like that. The office of the leader that we talked about has about 5,000 people working for that all around the country, besides to many, many institutions that are related to them. And any other, and they were prepared for this war. After that 12 days war, they expected that will be under attack while they are negotiating. So one of the preparation is to have 3 or 4 people for every position, military and non-military positions of the regime. So for this reason, everybody who is killed, they don't need to think about the substitution. They already have thought about it, and many other things. So I think that this is not the way. This regime is not the regime of Venezuela. And now the war has turned really ugly. It has turned, instead of the regime that Iranian people expected, it has turned against the people of Iran and against the country of Iran. And whatever President Trump says, sometimes he uses very impolite and harsh words against Iran, not only the regime. When he says that I will bring back to Stone Age, he doesn't understand that Iran is a 4,000-year civilization over there. And nobody has succeeded to push back Iran to Stone Ages. I know what he is in his mind, but he knows that we have had, for instance, Genghis Khan invasion against Iran that destroyed many of our cities and killed millions of people in that invasion. But after 50 years, these invaders became civilized by Iranians and converted their religion and learned how to run that country by Iranians, or Arab invaders to Iran, or even Alexander from Macedonia, that the Western people call him great, and we still call him Gojaste, means damned one. Iranians are very kind, but don't forget. In their long history, don't forgive anybody who destroyed their country. And I'm sorry to say that President Trump is going to be in the list of the people who destroyed Iran, and next to people like Genghis Khan or other invaders to Iran.
So, Mohsen, do you expect then, he's given another deadline. He gave a deadline today, Monday, but now he's moved it till 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Tuesday, that if the Straits of Hormuz are not opened by then, he will start bombing infrastructure, electric plants, even desalinization. It's only, I think, very little dependence on desalinization on the Iranian side. There's a lot on the other side of the Gulf, but not in Iran. But nevertheless, he's poised to do terrible destruction, and that's what he said in his obscene tweet on Easter Sunday. So, given what you just told us, this is a horrible prospect, and we just don't know whether he's bluffing or desperate. We know he's desperate because if he's clearly out of his depth and frustrated and doesn't know what he's doing. But on the other hand, this is an unstable man with a very frail grasp of reality. He also, could even resort to nuclear weapons to get rid of the 440 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. I don't rule out anything with this guy, but he does seem to want to end it. Is there anything the Iranians can do to prevent the destruction of their country? I know they're proud and they don't like being bullied, but on the other hand, facing the destruction of your country, what choice do you have?
I agree with you that such a horrible decision and action will destroy Iran. Iran is 92 million population, the most populated country in the region. And more than 70 million Iranians live in cities of Iran, and they will suffer too much. Millions of people will suffer and will be in poverty, unemployment, and many other things. This is why I say that we Iranians will not forgive President Trump and even the US, unfortunately. I'm an American Iranian. I love this country like I love Iran, but I can't forgive President Trump if he goes for that. Anyway, I think that Iranians now have a leverage. That's Hormuz Strait. And they have seen that it works. And they can threaten that. And besides to that, if Iran infrastructure will be destroyed, they go for threatening of Bab al-Mandab as well. They can do that and put more pressure on the world business and trading. And besides to attacking to Israel and the Arab states in Persian Gulf. So, I mean, this is not the solution, and Hormuz Strait will not be open. Iran, I think that the best way, because Iran now doesn't trust not President Trump and particularly Israel, because they believe that Israel wants to destroy Iran and make a failed state in Iran, civil war in Iran, and make Iran a country like Libya or Syria, and make sure that Iran is too weak, that will be no threat for Israel anymore for maybe 1 or 2 decades. I don't know if they succeed or not, but this is what Iranians believe. So the only way that I can say is President Trump can order to stop the war, not the US, but the Israel as well. During last 5 weeks, several times President Trump has extended the threat ultimatum, but all these 5 weeks, Israel war machine and the Air Force has not stopped and systematically destroyed the military capacity of Iran, factories of Iran, infrastructure of Iran, and people of Iran. 70% of the air strikes of Israel were against Tehran, a 12 million population capital city of Iran. And it's really horrible in Iran. So, I mean, the best way is as soon as possible for President Trump, first stop this war, not from the US, but from the Israel as well. Then returning to diplomacy and negotiation table. Then they can talk about stop threatening Hormuz Strait, open it, and whatever. As a politician, I can say that it's doable to have an agreement. If the U.S. can't have trust of Iran, can bring back 5+1 to negotiation table again. Because those objectives, I mean, nuclear, missile, and proxy groups will not be achieved just by war. This war is aimless. This war doesn't fulfill the objectives of President Trump or anybody who thinks that they can achieve it. So should go back to the negotiation table and try to solve it. As an Iranian in opposition, I hope that in any negotiation, don't forget the people of Iran. And one of the conditions should be say to Iran that stop execution of the political prisoners, open the doors of prisons for political prisoners, people like Mousavi who have been under house arrest for 16 years with his wife, or other political prisoners should be released. These are the stances that can at least show the people of Iran that he really worries about the people of Iran and the Iranians, instead of threatening whole the country and acting against the whole country and the people of Iran.
Right, but Trump already hung the Iranian people out to dry. He made promises back in January that he threatened the government. If you shoot the people, I will rescue the people. He told the people to go to demonstrate in front of government facilities. Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, he also made similar promises that he would rescue them and that Trump would rescue them. And then this brutal government then massacred, 6,000, 7,000. Trump says 40,000. Nobody believes that figure, but nevertheless, what they did was so horrible to their own people. And I think Trump and Pahlavi, the baby Shah, have blood on their hands. You can't tell people to go out in the streets and then they get massacred and you say, oh, oops, sorry.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very sad story and a tragedy that happened last January. I know that the murderer was Khamenei and some commanders of IRGC. They should be tried in a court like Nuremberg, but responsibility goes to President Trump, Pahlavi, who amplified whatever Trump said, and Iran International TV, 24 hours, London-based, Saudi-funded TV, that altogether they promised the people that if you come to streets, they can't kill you. And help is on the way. This is what President Trump repeated 4 times, wrote it, not only talked about it. And, people of Iran had experience in front of this regime. If such wars didn't promise them, they were cautious enough not to go for attacking, for instance, to garrisons or attacking to office of the government. That was the order, the invitation from Trump and Reza Pahlavi, who told them that go and get the governmental centers. And thousands of people were killed. Yeah, I don't believe in such figures that Trump says or some people says, but at least doesn't matter. At least 5,000-6,000 people have been killed. And I think that, yes, the blood is on their hand. And they promised the people something that they didn't fulfill that. And that was just a lie, a big lie to the people of Iran.
So, Dr. Mohsen Sazegara, since you were a founder of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and you know the mentality of the men that run Iran, and particularly the late Ayatollah Khamenei, and we talked also about Moshtaba, his son, who may may or may not be in charge but he's been made the supreme leader. Whether he's still alive or not, we don't know. We know that if he's alive, he's badly wounded. So let's talk about that. You mentioned going back to the P5+1, the JCPOA. It's worth noting that China and Russia, along with the European nations and plus Germany and the US, all signed on to that. So the assumption has always been that this Iranian government is too radical, is outside the norms. It doesn't behave like other countries do. It doesn't follow the rules, that, you really can't trust them with a nuclear weapon. I mean, after all, North Korea has nuclear weapons, and that's a crazy regime. But somehow or other, we see the Iranian regime as being even more unstable and more dangerous than the North Korean regime. So is that belief justified? In other words, is this government in Iran beyond the pale?
Don't forget that was President Trump in his first term that left JCPOA. Even if he wanted to put pressure on Iran, he could go through JCPOA. There were mechanisms in that agreement, Articles 36 and 37. He could go through JCPOA and put pressure on Iran if Iran violated that treaty. But he left that and opened the hands of that regime to violate JCPOA as well. So, I mean, it doesn't work like that. Not against Iran, but in all the world. You can't just think that by threatening, supporting the hardliners to, yes, go and get that power or threaten the Europe, anywhere. I'm criticizing President Trump. He doesn't think about the consequences of whatever he does with respect to NATO, with respect to Denmark or China or Russia or Ukraine, and now with respect to Iran. So I think that this regime, if you know this regime, this is not like that you think that this regime is unified. There are different factions inside the regime. There are different, because of the war, now they are all together to defend the country. But after this war, you can see that not only reformists or principalists, hardliners, moderate people, but there are big cracks inside IRGC as well. There are big cracks inside the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran, especially the corruption in that regime and injustice in the income of the people have created lots of problems inside the supporters of this regime. So it's doable to deal with the people of Iran, and changing of this regime is doable by the hands of the people of Iran based on the principles of civil resistance. I mean, protests, non-cooperation tactics to paralyze the regime, and defection from the regime. It's doable, defecting from that regime. We have tested it. For instance, 3 years ago in Mahsa Revolution, Woman, Life, Freedom, there were big cracks inside the regime, and they were not able to suppress the people. And the women of Iran won that campaign, imposed hijab. They imposed to the regime that we choose our clothes, and you can't impose hijab to us. And after that, regime retreated. So, I mean, civil resistance, its tactics, and the strategy of one by one from different parts of the regime, going ahead and surrounding the regime. It's famous as civil surrounding of the regime, especially by civil society of Iran. We can go ahead and transfer that country to a democracy, secular democracy, moderate regime based on human rights and working with the modern world instead of fighting with modern world that this medieval regime is doing. But it's at the hands of the people of Iran. It doesn't happen from airstrikes from the air and killing the people or destroying the capacities of the country.
So just in the last couple of minutes then, Dr. Mohsen Sazegara, I've spoken to some of the people that negotiated the JCPOA with John Kerry and under President Obama. And they said that there was no way they could do anything but the nuclear deal, that the Iranians simply will not negotiate on missiles and proxies. So you seem to think that you can make a deal with them when people who've tried to make a deal with them say you can't.
I think that missile capacity in Iran is something that no government can accept to limit it under 500 kilometers, 300 miles. This is what Israel wants. And, Iran has no air force and does not have any other tools other than missile and drones to defend the country. And we live in a, region of the world that there are lots of troubles in that region. Our neighbors are not Sweden or Denmark or Switzerland. Our neighbors are Taliban, Pakistan. Or we have had 8 years war with Iraq. So, the solution is not push for limiting the board of the missiles. The solution is pushing for a moderate regime in Iran by the hands of the people and trying to push for removing the elimination of Israel from the table of the foreign policy of Iran. Because while these two pillars of the foreign policy of Iran, elimination of Israel, wiping out Israel from map, and against the U.S. policies, these two pillars have not been changed during last 47 years. But there are many factions in the regime, even I can say inside IRGC, that believe that now is the time that we should change these two policies. Then we will have the open hands in foreign policies of Iran. So this is the way. Other way, I think that there will be unrest and conflicts, not only in Iran, but in the whole region.
Well, Dr. Mohsen Sazegara, I thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Definitely an illuminating conversation, and I appreciate it. And again, I've been speaking with Dr. Mohsen Sazegara, who is an Iranian journalist and pro-democracy political activist who was a founder of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and held several high-ranking positions during the early years of the Iranian Revolution. And this has been Background Briefing. I'm Ian Masters, and I'd like to thank producers Graham Fitzgibbon, Asher Price, and Sasha Linden-Cohen. If you missed any of today's program and would like to explore our vast archives, you can find us at backgroundbriefing.org, where we include extended interviews, searchable by topic, and have made it easier for you to sign up for daily email updates and provide links to resources, articles, and books discussed on the program. Also, you can find links there to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we highly encourage your ratings and reviews on these platforms. Find us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook at Ian Masters Media, and our new social media manager, Luke Susswood, is also posting highlights from the show on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Ian Masters Media. So please do help us reach more listeners by sharing this program with friends, family, and colleagues. And to help sustain this program into the future and ensure it remains free to all, please take a moment to support us by going to backgroundbriefing.org/donate and/or at publictruthmedia.org, where your tax-deductible donations, large and small, keep us broadcasting. And I'll be back tomorrow with another background briefing at backgroundbriefing.org. Bye for now.